On the morning of 5th July, 1943, across a front stretching more than 160 miles, from Orel in the north to Belgorod in the south, the ground trembled under the weight of the largest armored offensive ever attempted. Operation Zitadelle, Germany's final bid to regain the initiative on the Eastern Front, was underway. At its spearhead were some of the most feared weapons of the war: Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tigers, heavily armored, powerfully armed. Symbol of German technological confidence. 3 Tiger battalions, Schwere Panzerabteilung 503, Schwere Panzerabteilung 505, and Tiger companies embedded within the 2 SS Panzer Corps were committed to break through the Soviet defenses around Kursk. Their mission was clear: smash the Red Army's fortified belts, link up with advancing forces from the opposite pincer, and encircle Soviet armies in a decisive battle of annihilation. But little did they know, the Red Army had been waiting. What happened next would become legendary, not for a German victory, but for a counterattack that shattered the momentum of the Tiger advance and marked the beginning of the end for Germany's armored dominance in the East. By the summer of 1943, the war in the East had reached a critical juncture. After the catastrophe at Stalingrad, the Wehrmacht was battered, but not yet broken. The Eastern Front bulged outward around the city of Kursk, forming a massive salient held by the Soviets. For Adolf Hitler and the German High Command, this salient was both a threat and an opportunity. If the Germans could pinch it off, they might destroy multiple Soviet armies and regain the strategic initiative. To do so, they assembled elite formations and their newest weapons. Among them were the Tiger battalions, independent heavy tank units equipped with the 56-ton Tiger I, armed with the lethal 88mm KWK-36 L-56 gun. On paper, the Tiger could destroy any Soviet tank at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, while its frontal armor was nearly impervious to return fire. Schwere Panzerabteilung 503, attached to Army Group South, mustered around 45 Tigers. Schwere Panzerabteilung 505, operating in the north under Army Group Center, fielded a similar number. Meanwhile, the SS divisions, Leibstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf, each deployed Tiger companies, integrating them into their armored spearheads. Facing them was a Red Army transformed. Forewarned by intelligence from multiple sources, Soviet commanders, most notably Marshal Georgy Zhukov, chose not to preempt the attack. Instead, they prepared. Over 300,000 civilians and soldiers dug trenches, laid mines, and built anti-tank strongpoints. The Kursk salient became a fortress in depth. 8 defensive belts, layered with artillery, anti-tank guns, and concealed armor reserves. This moment was critical because it represented a clash of doctrines. German faith in armored breakthrough versus Soviet belief in defense, attrition, and counterattack. And at the heart of it stood the Tigers. At 0430 hours on 5 July, German artillery opened fire. The barrage was thunderous, but it lacked surprise. Soviet guns responded almost immediately, their shells crashing down on German assembly areas. As dawn broke, the Tiger battalions began to roll forward. In the north, near Ponry Station, SPZ ABT 505 advanced alongside the 9th Army. The terrain here was deceptive. Gentle slopes, broken by ravines, and villages turned into fortresses. By 0800 hours, Tigers were already encountering dense minefields. Engineer teams rushed forward under fire, clearing paths as Soviet artillery zeroed in. By 1000 hours, the Tigers engaged Soviet T-34s and Su-76 assault guns. At long range, the 88mm guns spoke with deadly authority. Soviet tanks burned, their turrets blown apart. German crews reported kills at distances previously unimaginable. Confidence surged against impossible odds. It seemed the Tigers were doing exactly what they had been designed to do. In the south, the situation was even more intense. SPZ Abt 503, supporting the 4th Panzer Army, moved toward Oboyan. Here, the SS divisions pushed forward with fanatical determination. By 1400 hours, Tiger tanks of the Leibstandarte were engaging Soviet positions near Yakolevo. The air was thick with smoke. The deafening roar of artillery never ceased. Yet for every Soviet tank destroyed, another appeared. Soviet commanders fed reserves into the fight, pulling units from the steppe front. Mines crippled Tigers, blowing off tracks and immobilizing them. Artillery fire bracketed German advances. For 3 brutal hours, progress was measured in yards. By 7 July, the Tigers had advanced, but at a cost. Mechanical breakdowns mounted. Fuel consumption was enormous. Crews were exhausted, nerves stretched thin. Fear gripped the men, though few would admit it. Still, the order came down. Press on. The decisive breakthrough was believed to be just 200 yards away. The crisis erupted on 12 July 1943, near the small railway junction of Prokhorovka. Here, the German advance met the full weight of a Soviet counterstroke. The 5th Guards Tank Army, under General Pavel Rotmistrov, was unleashed. At dawn, waves of Soviet armor surged forward. Hundreds of T-34s, T-70 light tanks, and self-propelled guns charging directly into the German formations. Visibility was poor. Dust, smoke, and burning vehicles reduced engagement ranges to mere dozens of meters. For the Tiger crews, this was a nightmare scenario. Their greatest advantage, long-range firepower, was neutralized. Soviet tanks closed in, firing at point-blank range. Some rammed German vehicles. Others swarmed immobilized Tigers, targeting tracks and rear armor. By 0900 hours, radio traffic became frantic. SS commanders reported being overwhelmed. Tigers fired until barrels overheated. Ammunition ran low. Soviet infantry, armed with anti-tank rifles and explosives, crept forward through the chaos. In the north, near Ponary, SPZ Abt 505 faced relentless assaults. Soviet artillery pounded known Tiger positions. By midday, several Tigers lay abandoned, their crews killed or wounded. Recovery was impossible under constant fire. Everything seemed lost. The German timetable collapsed. Units were intermingled. Commanders struggled to maintain control. The battlefield was a hellscape of twisted metal and shattered men. Against impossible odds, the Tigers fought on, but the initiative was slipping away. The turning point did not come from a single heroic act, but from a calculated Soviet decision. Recognizing that the German offensive had stalled, Soviet High Command ordered sustained counterattacks across the salient. Fresh reserves poured in. Artillery barrages intensified. Soviet air power, once negligible, now struck German columns and supply lines. Tigers without fuel or ammunition were abandoned and destroyed by their own crews. By 13 July, Hitler himself intervened, diverting forces to Italy following the Allied landings in Sicily. The order to halt Operation Zitadelle followed shortly after. The Tiger battalions, once the tip of the spear, were now fighting to survive. SPZ Abt 503 reported heavy losses, both combat and mechanical. SPZ Abt 505, though still operational, was reduced in strength. SS Tiger companies were battered, their veteran crews irreplaceable. The Red Army had done what many believed impossible. Through sheer determination, depth of defense, and relentless counterattack, they had blunted and then broken the Tiger advance. What happened next would become legendary, not as a German triumph, but as a Soviet one. When the guns fell silent, the cost was staggering. The Germans had lost hundreds of tanks and tens of thousands of men. While Tiger losses were proportionally smaller, their impact was profound. The myth of German armored invincibility was shattered. Soviet casualties were immense. Estimates range into the hundreds of thousands. But the strategic victory was undeniable. Kursk marked the last major German offensive in the east. From this point forward, the Wehrmacht would be in retreat. Decorations were awarded on both sides. Soviet tank crews received the Order of the Red Banner and Hero of the Soviet Union honors. German commanders praised Tiger crews for their courage, but privately acknowledged the shift in momentum. The battlefield of Kursk became a symbol, not of technology, but of human endurance. The Tigers had advanced. The counterattack had ended them. And the war had turned. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to WWII Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.